it's not gone off because when I was at school, they taught us that if you use shit wine to make a dish, you're going to have a shit dish. So that'll work. Okay, so today we are making a wonderful comfort food for the winter, and it's just a traditional beef stew. If we were in France, it would be a boeuf bourguignon, and it would be the beef would be marinated in wine overnight, and wine would be sort of the basis of this dish. We're using stock. This is just sort of an everyday comfort food type of meal. So I'm starting with my handy dandy cast iron pan, and I have my meat. The thing about beef stew is that there are different ways to do it, and I'm just doing it. I'm doing it sort of my way. I think it's easy to make a really good beef stew. It just takes time because you really want to brown the beef and let the flavors simmer. Now, where I was going with this, there's two ways to thicken a stew. One is that you can dredge the meat in flour before you brown it, and the other way, which is the more French way, hence the way I do it, is that you brown the meat, and after you've browned the meat, you sprinkle a little bit of flour in the pot, let that cook with the meat, and that is how you thicken it. You could always thicken it a little more if you need to later by using what's called a beurre manier, which is really nice. It adds a little something to it as well because it's basically just butter mixed with flour. So you make it so that it's a thick paste. The butter helps the flour to incorporate without getting lumpy. So, and the butter adds, obviously butter makes everything good, but the butter adds just a little bit of oomph, richness to the sauce. So you can either do a beurre manier, or you can either dredge it in flour or sprinkle flour on it. And either way, if at the end you would like to have your stew a little thicker, I know Billy really likes his stew thick. Thickness is one of those things that doesn't matter to me. But if you want to thicken a little bit later on, the beurre manier is a great way to do it. And it's usually you would do equal parts butter to flour. So 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of flour. Make sure the butter's soft and really mix it in together. So we need a little bit of olive oil. As always, when you're cooking with olive oil, make sure you're using a fairly good quality olive oil to cook with. The reason behind that is that an older olive oil, a lower quality olive oil, will tend to burn while you're cooking. Olive oil doesn't support cooking at as high a temperature as, say, a canola oil or a peanut oil will. But if you have a really good olive oil, a very good quality, you can certainly cook at a higher temperature with it. So I'm just going to put, whoop, I didn't mean to put that much. I need a little porry spout here because it always comes out too much. And if you haven't heard the story, this is my fresh olive oil from Italy that a very nice man named Tio pulled me over while I was walking down an alleyway and said, "Do you want to try my olive oil?" I'm thinking this is a euphemism for something, although he was about 80. And I said, "Absolutely." So he took me in and I tried his olive oil from his own olive groves, and just unbelievable. And he had this great big bottle, and it was, fresh, beautiful. I said, "How much?" He said, €16. Sold. And it was my last day. I was actually heading home that day. And so the last euros in my wallet I gave to him and said, "Here you go. I'll take it." And I didn't even have enough space in my suitcase to bring it home with me. So I put it in storage for my apartment in Italy. And then when I went back in October, I said, "Oh, look, here's my olive oil." And I brought it home. So it's still good, just in case you're wondering. Okay, so I'm going to get tongs, my trusty tongs. You know what? I should have made sure my trusty tongs were available for me. I don't even know where they are. I've lost my trusty tongs. I know I haven't. You know what happens is, and let me know if this happens to you, is my dear sweet Billy puts stuff away and he puts it in different places than I put it. Here they are. Okay, so the trick with making stew, and you want it to be nice and brown, right? I can turn the temperature down on this, is you want to brown the meat because the browned meat, brings color, right? That's where this rich dark colors come from. But also the browned meat, I'm going to pull this closer. I hope that this works. Is this not plugged in? Oh, do sorry. I hope you can hear me because it says that that's not working. I don't know why that's not working. Let me just see if I can give it a direct connection. This microphone sometimes just says, I don't feel like working. Okay. Yeah. Okay, it's working. Okay. Bring it a little closer because I know the sizzling makes it a little browner or a little louder. So the meat in the pot, when we brown it in the oil, that gives color, but it also brings out the sugars, hence the color, and really gives it a deep flavor. So you want to brown the meat, but the best way to do it, really, if you're trying to get the best result, is to do it slowly. So I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Slow and steady wins the race in this situation. So where we've just got the meat in here, we're going to brown it on each side, and we're going to let it get nice and brown. We're not going to scrape any bits off the bottom of it yet. That will come when we deglaze the pan in a little bit. So while I'm waiting for my meat to cook, I'm going to do some peeling and cutting of vegetables. Got my handy dandy garbage bowl, which I really like to have a garbage bowl. Because it just makes it efficient when you're cutting things up and you have a place to put your garbage as you create it. Okay. Usually I do this a little bit faster, but sometimes when I do it faster, the carrot peel goes flying everywhere. So as you may have heard me say, if you've been to any of my cooking classes before, I am on my best behavior when I'm doing these classes. So, all right. I would have done this earlier, but I've been on calls straight since 9 a.m. this morning. I didn't have time. As a matter of fact, for my breakfast and lunch combined, I just ate a package of trail mix. So I wasn't starving, wanting to chew my arm off. Okay, so let's check and see the beef. Okay, so can you see? Nice brown color. I've got my phone recording too, so if you see me sort of paying attention to two different places at once, that's why. All right. And the last carrot. I love carrots. If I'm roasting a chicken, quite often what I do is I just cut up some carrots, onions, and potatoes and toss them in a little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper, some garlic, maybe an onion, and I roast them right under the chicken, and I just love the roasted carrots. And similarly in stew, the slow cooked carrots I think are always so delicious. So I like to put a lot of carrots in. All right, and in terms of how you cut your carrots up, for me, when you're making a stew, I always like to make things sort of meal-sized, but especially I want them big so that it's got, this bountiful look to it. But especially with carrots, if you put them in little tiny pieces, they're going to cook away to nothing at all, and they'll cook too fast. So I prefer not to do that. So I just leave them whole, except you'll see one I cut in half because it was a really big one. So you can cut it in smaller pieces if that's what you prefer. If you're happier doing that, then by all means. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't cut it into quarters because then generally that will cook too fast. So cut it in big chunky circles if you prefer it like that. You know what? Now that these have started to cook a little bit, what you want to do is you want to have them in a single layer. If you have them in a, like if it's crowded in the pot, instead of browning, they will steam. We absolutely do not want steamed meat because then it's tough and it doesn't get the browning that you need. So I've got enough room because when they cook, they shrink a little bit. So I'm going to put these in, but I'm still not crowding them. And if it seems like they're crowding, then I will take some out, but I think they still have enough air circulation around them that they will cook and brown beautifully. Make sure I have this centered on the burner. Oh yeah, that's good. Woo, it's slippery because the grease has, or the oil has splattered a little bit. So it's slippery. If I want to move it, it's not a problem. Zip right around. Okay, and I can fit these extra pieces in without it being too crowded. Okay, so when these are browned, fully browned, then I will sprinkle a little bit of sugar and let that sugar cook in the fat that's in the bottom of the pan. If there's too much fat, I would drain it, but there won't be. Generally with stew, even though you're using stew beef, which should be a fattier meat, it generally doesn't leave a whole bunch of extra fat on the bottom of the pan. Now, if you're wondering what kind of meat to use, in a lot of places you can just find stew beef and it's cut into chunks. If not, you want to use something like a rump roast or a blade roast, something that is, you know, maybe not the best quality of beef, but oftentimes these ones are really very, very flavorful. But the important part is that they're well marbled and they're not super lean, because if you put a super lean meat in a stew, sometimes you can end up with something that's a little bit dry. So when you use the marbled ones, they really cook beautifully and they're very tender and juicy, and like I said, a lot of flavor. So this, some of you are going to say you don't need to explain this to me, but this is what we call a turnip. I think in England they call it a swede, and I don't know if they call it in France because I've never seen one of these in France. Some turning here going on. I got the browning. Turn that temperature up a little bit. They don't have big ones like this in France that I've ever seen. In France, the turnips are smaller and they're purpley. Interestingly enough, this has always been a turnip. I've never known this as anything but a turnip. But when I'm in the grocery store, what I'm looking up is a rutabaga. So I wonder if that's an American term, rutabaga, because I've always called them turnips. My family always called them turnips. So it's interesting to see different places have different names for things. Like zucchini, in a lot of places in the world, I'd say probably most places other than North America, zucchini are called courgette and eggplant are called aubergine. So it may be a translation thing too. But I am peeling my swede slash rutabaga slash turnip. And I'm not going to use all of this because this is a lot of turnip for a small stew. And it's just Billy and I. So, you know, we'll have stew for a couple days, but we don't need tons of it. And he doesn't love turnip, although he doesn't mind it in stew, because when you cook the turnip in the stew, it really does take on the flavor of what you're creating. So the turnips don't cook that soft that quickly, so you don't have to make them bigger pieces to make sure they stay in one piece. You can really just, whoops, man down, I dropped a carrot. Oh, let's rinse that off before we reuse it. Okay. Yeah, we've got some really nice color going here. Okay, think it's going to be delightful. So the reason I chose this particular pan, you can do it in a Dutch oven or any other sort, but I'm going to put it in the oven to brown or to simmer once it's finished, once I've finished assembling it. So that's why I chose to do it in this one, because this really translates nicely into going into the oven. Okay, so I'm going to peel those potatoes in a sec, but next I'm going to go with the onion. Saute the onion, brown the onion. And I'm going to put a clove of garlic in. This is not a dish that's meant to be garlicky. This is a dish that's meant to have a really amazing sort of symphony of flavors that go together and intertwine. It's not meant to be really overtly one thing or another. So I will absolutely put a clove of garlic in for a little added nuance, but I will not put a lot in so that you can tell when you taste it that there's a lot of garlic in it. That would be contrary to what I like my stew to be like. Okay. That's looking good. I'm just going to put the onions in, and they can start to brown a little bit. Put my garlic clove in. If you have a garlic press and you prefer to use that, by all means, feel free. The thing about garlic is that it doesn't cook down and disappear the way, say, an onion would. So make sure you chop it up in small pieces if you're chopping it, and just know that it will kind of stay solid in its form, but it will take on the flavor of everything else, much like I said with the turnip. So if you hit upon a piece of garlic when you're eating it, you're not going to get a really big punch of garlic in your mouth. And I should tell you about the carrots. If I had nice carrots that looked kind of fresh and yummy, I would probably not peel the carrots. And I don't tell people that who are eating it, because sometimes they're like, oh, you got to peel them. But the carrot peels obviously are not really thick, chunky peels. So you can absolutely wash the carrots and skip the peeling part if you've got some nice carrots. These ones were, I bought a big bag at Costco, which I've never done before. And they were pretty huge and mature. They weren't brand new. Okay, so the onions are stirring in there and sauteing. I'm putting a little bit of salt and pepper, and we'll adjust at the end too. But you have to have salt and pepper at this stage because you want that to develop the flavors as it cooks. It already smells good. The smell of the beef and the onions together, really nice. All right, now the flour. So like I said, we have chosen not to, the royal we, that's me, has chosen not to dredge the meat in flour. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to sprinkle this flour along here. And the idea is you don't want any big chunks of flour. You just want like a thin cover of flour. And then I will stir again. There we go. So this is going to thicken it. This will help to thicken the stew as it cooks. And I will add just a little blob. I talked about this in the directions. I should use a spoon, but I'm not going to. I'm just putting a little bit of tomato paste in there. And the idea is that it gives the sauce a little bit of body. It's not meant to make it tomatoey. It just gives it a little body because tomato paste is heavy and thick and really can just add a little substance. So just a little bit. I stir that around. Then I'm going to take my handy dandy bottle of wine. And you don't have to use the wine. If it makes you uncomfortable to use wine, then by all means, please do not. The wine, the alcohol cooks off the wine, so I mean, you can serve this to kids. It's not a concern that there's alcohol in it, but again, it just adds one little more dimension to the flavor. So I'm going to take my beef stock. I've got 4 cups here. I don't know if I'll use all 4 cups. I'm going to change my stirring implement as well. I can use my nice new spoon that I got at IKEA. It's kind of cool. I can use this for cooking. And instantly it's much more quiet here. So you want to use the spoon to scrape any bits that might be on the bottom of the pot. And you can see, I'll show you in a sec. Oh, it didn't, they slipped off. When you're scraping up the bottom bits of the pot from the browning, they'll be really brown. Not black, they're not burnt, they're just really dark brown. And that really makes a difference with the color. Piece of onion, I should have peeled it one more layer down. All right. So I'm going to show you this if you can see it. It's got a nice dark brown color. It's starting to simmer. Turn that down a little bit. All right, so into this for a little zoomfy of flavor. I'm gonna put 2 bay leaves. These are bay leaves from France. I gotta reload because I only have 1 left. I'm gonna put a little bit of thyme and rosemary. Actually, I'm not gonna put rosemary because I don't have any. I can't remember. It's downstairs. I forgot. But this is just a little bit of dried thyme. This time of year, we of course do not have herbs available in the garden, so it is what it is. You can also put herbs de Provence in here. Your herbs will slightly alter the flavor of what you have, so it's really what you want. If you really love rosemary, then you make sure you put rosemary in. You can put oregano, gives it a slightly more Italian type of flavor, right? So I think thyme is a good one. It adds that earthy, herby flavor, but it's not really overpowering. The bay leaf is always good. It just adds a little dimension. So while that sort of gets started and simmers, I'm going to peel the potatoes. This isn't going to last. Hold on. I'm much faster with the knife, but I lose more of the potato, but I don't care because I'm much faster with a knife. All right. I always use Yukon Gold potatoes. I don't know. I love the flavor. I love the slightly off-white color of them. They're a little creamier. Make some room for myself here. These are done. I can put those in the sink. All right, much faster with a knife. So that's bubbling away. I'm just going to turn that down a bit. Because really a simmer is preferable. But what we're going to do is once we've added the vegetables, we stir them in. I'm going to taste the broth for just, it's not perfect yet, but I want to know if it needs a little bit of salt to finish it off. And I'm going to put it in the oven. I've got the oven set to 300 degrees because it will just simmer very slowly at 300 degrees. And I can leave it in there for an hour or 2 and it should come out perfectly at the end. If you're doing it on stovetop, I would simmer it for at least an hour. And if you've got 2 hours to spare, then that's great, but you're going to do it on low. You're going to just have it a very gentle simmer. Check on it from time to time, stir it. The thing about doing it in the oven is I can put it in the oven and then go back to my office and forget that it's there. I don't have to worry about stirring or burning on the bottom or anything like that. Of course, if you're going to do it in the oven, then you need a pot, comme ça, that has metal handles that you can put in the oven because, the plastic handles, they don't like the oven so much. Okay, here's my potatoes. I'm going to cut these into fairly big chunks too because the potatoes cook so fast and they add to the body of the sauce for sure, but they also fall apart and just they're not as nice when they cook down completely. So I'm just cutting these into 4 big chunks. And you know, I'm the type of person, if you didn't put potatoes in stew at all, wouldn't bother me. But Billy is not that person. All right. And at this point, when I stir these in, I'm probably going to, by the looks of it, going to add a little bit more stock. And of course, the vegetables, they cook down, and as they soften up, they sort of reduce, right? So it looks like I've got mostly vegetables and not much beef, but it will cook down and reduce in volume. All right, so and I just want enough stock to barely cover the vegetables. It is time for the big reveal. The stew has been in the oven for about 2 hours. I've had it on 300, so it can be in there for a very long time. But let's pull it out and put it on the little trivet here and see what we have. It smells really good. Can you smell it, Billy?
Oh yeah.
Woo-wee!
Can't wait to eat it.
Woo-hoo! I stepped away from the oven when I opened the door so it didn't fog up again. Now, when you put a pot in the oven like this, it's pretty easy to forget that it's hot when you take it out. So just make sure that you keep your oven mitts closed. Oh, it smells so good. Looks like everything has mingled really nicely. See if I can get this closer without burning myself. You can see it. There we go. It looks amazing. And we just want to take a piece of meat out and make sure. Oh yeah, look at how tender that is. That's beautiful. So just put it right back in there. And that's it. You have an amazing beef stew that didn't take a lot of effort. It takes a little bit of time because you have to stew it to make sure that the meat is tender, but it doesn't take a lot of effort, and it's just really basic cooking techniques to give you something that's flavorful and amazing. Oh, I did say we're going to test it too, right? We want to make sure that it doesn't need any seasoning before we serve it. Oh, it's so good. I think it's perfect. It doesn't need salt and pepper, in my opinion. Billy might put a little on in his plate. Everybody has their own taste. The carrots and the turnip give it a little bit of a sweet flavor, so it's really delightful. So I hope that you have enjoyed this. I can't wait to hear how yours turns out when you recreate it. And until next time, have an awesome day, and we'll see you soon in the group.